This Bible question is an excerpt from our television program, What Do the Scriptures Say? We hope that it will enrich your spiritual life, and we hope that you'll come back to www.scripturesay.com to find answers to your Bible questions. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a look at Caesarea Philippi. That's the way they pronounce it in Israel, and perhaps you've heard it pronounced Caesarea. But if you realize that these cities, both Caesarea Philippi and Caesarea on the coast, were named by Roman emperors, then you understand why the pronunciation might be and is Caesarea. Caesarea Philippi is a very interesting place, and I want you to be able to see the background of this place. And let's set the biblical significance of it by going to a very, very important passage in Matthew chapter 16. Read it with me. Matthew 16, 13 through 20. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you will bind on earth will have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will have been loosed in heaven." Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ. I wanted you to have that biblical passage to see the significance of what we're going to talk about. If you read from the King James Version, the 1611 version, you've got a little problem in the very beginning, because it inappropriately has the coastal regions of Caesarea. That's a different spot, and I'm not sure why the King James Version has that problem there, other than the fact that the King James was translated from the Latin Vulgate rather than from the Greek translation of the New Testament. Perhaps there was a little error there. I haven't checked that out. But I do know that in later editions of the King James Version, the New King James Version has changed that, so they have recognized that problem. And I say that to tell you that the coastal regions of Caesarea and Caesarea Philippi are two different places, two different cities. This is the place, as is depicted in this mural that comes from the Sistine Chapel, that the famous words were uttered by Christ to Peter, "I give you the keys to the kingdom." On the map, here is where you will find Caesarea Philippi, north of the Sea of Galilee, and at the headwaters of one of the three streams that flows into making up the Jordan River before it flows into the Sea of Galilee, and then on down further into the Dead Sea. So it's a very significant location. It's a place that the apostles did a lot of work, and it's a place that it's very important for us to be able to see the background. I want you to be able to see what the background was in the culture, and how dramatically different Jesus' teaching was in that spot from that teaching that the apostles or the residents of that area would have been exposed to in the first century. And we'll talk in detail about that when we come back in just a minute. What you're looking at is a picture that I took while visiting at Caesarea Philippi. And you're looking at waters that come up after first appearing in that cave that you're looking at. These waters disappear underground and then come forth as a spring, and you can see there's quite a large volume of water that's coming there. You're looking at a cave that as early as the 3rd century BC has been a place of pagan worship. I want you to see this very clearly as we get a little closer and look at the volume of water there. We're going to go over to that cave, and here's a little closer view of it. It's a rather large area that's been worked out by the water, and in the bottom of that cave, what you can't see is a spring of water that just wells up. Quite a significant volume of water. This is kind of a side view of some of the monuments and carvings in the solid rock that are found in association with the cave. And then we have this sign posted there, the Grotto of the god Pan. This is very significant. In the centuries before Christ, offerings to the god Pan were made, sacrifices were made at this site. And it's in all likelihood the place that was in use during the days of the apostles and Jesus. May have even been in use, likely was in use, at the very time that Matthew 16 and the disciples were at this scene. Pan was offered sacrifices, and the sacrifices were slain and thrown into that cave. It is said that if the sacrifice disappeared and no portions of it or no blood was seen in the springs that came forth underground, then the sacrifice was acceptable to Pan. If, however, there was blood observed in the water that flowed out of the spring that reappears, then that sacrifice was rejected. I want you to understand then that what we're talking about is a place of pagan idolatry. And to refresh your memory on the god Pan, Pan was a half goat, half man deity in Greek and Roman thought. He was a god associated with fertility. He was the shepherd god. Here is a statue of the god Pan that's found in Athens, where he is present with Aphrodite and with Eros. And so you can see there's a close association with, I hate to say romantic love because it's anything but romantic love, but here is how he's pictured. And here's another statue that comes to us from the Athens Museum that depicts Pan, and you can see quite clearly his half goat, half man nature as he's presented there. This is an artist representation on the top of your screen of what Caesarea Philippi looked like in the 1st century. You see on the bottom of the screen, you see a reduced size picture that we'd looked at earlier. And to the left, where that temple is in the artist's depiction, is where that temple to Pan would have been located. In the middle, you'll see another temple. And that's a temple that was established to the god Zeus. And then on the right-hand top of your screen, you'll see another temple area that was established to the goat gods. All of this is to help you see just how pagan and idolatrous an influence is to be found at Caesarea Philippi. Today there are, of course, none of these structures left. There are ruins that have been excavated by archaeologists, and they've come to some rather definite conclusions about what existed there. Carved into the side of these, into the side of this solid rock are these beautiful little niches that would have contained idols and representations to the different gods. These were likely found at the back of the monuments that were built up there, and they're quite elaborate in their design. Very, very beautiful. This is actually the floor that is left over from one of the temples that existed there, and they've dated this to 1st century or perhaps earlier. I told you the temple of the sacred goats existed there. Thousands and thousands, maybe millions of bones have been found in this location associated with the sacrifices to the sacred temple of the goats. And this is a picture that's carved into stone of the Pan god as he would play his flute and drive the goats with him. As you look around Caesarea Philippi, you notice ruins that are still in the process of excavation, Roman ruins from around the 1st century, some a little later than that. And in all of these places, you marvel at the ability of these ancient people to carve out of solid rock these niches. The cave was a natural formation. The other structures were carved. Now, coming back out, I want you to see the extent of this water. And here is the place where, as I mentioned it, the water flows underground out of that cave and then reappears at this place. It is one of the 3 places where the Jordan River originates. But there is a great volume of water here, and it comes from, as much of the water in this region, from Mount Hermon in the snow runoff. And I was just in awe of the volume of water there. The Temple of Zeus was there. Let me remind you who Zeus was. From the Athens Museum, again, we have a headshot of what they believed Zeus represented and looked like. Here's another statue. He was the king of the gods. His symbols are the lightning bolts, which he threw down from heaven. And this is actually the ruins of the temple of Zeus, to be found at Caesarea Philippi. This is actually part of what they believe to be the throne at the temple of Zeus. And you'll notice that the stones there are made with great care. And then I want to take you back across the water to some seats in a little amphitheater type structure that looks back toward the cave. Here's the view that you would have from the seats, that very first view. And here's what I want you to see. Jesus sat his apostles down on those seats in all likelihood. And as they sat there looking at that idolatrous temple of both Pan and Zeus and the temple of the sacred goats and perhaps a temple to Artemis and Aphrodite, as they were looking at this scene from those seats with all of the thoughts of paganism before them, Jesus says to his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And Peter says, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." I want you to know what a statement of faith that was on Peter's part. That's the background of that statement. Peter made that statement against all of the politically correct thinking of his day, as they sat there and saw with their own eyes the paganism that existed in their culture. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now that's what you need to know about Caesarea Philippi. That's what you need to know about the significance of that statement. And I hope that you will never read that passage again without realizing the setting for such a statement. I'll take you back into Jerusalem when we come back right after this. Let us help you get started in your Bible study with a free Bible correspondence course. Call or write to us today. All right, now I want to take you to Jerusalem. I want to take you to the Praetorium, which is in Jerusalem. Here you've got me, you can see me right there in the middle, up against the western wall. It's difficult in Jerusalem to find places that the apostles actually and Jesus actually stood or walked, because as you know, Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans and then rebuilt a number of times by the Romans and by the Muslims and by the Crusaders. So what existed in Jerusalem in the first century, it's very difficult to find first century stuff. And here I am at a place that has traditionally been assigned to the western wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's the place where Jews go to pray today, and they do allow for individuals to visit that wall if you demonstrate the proper respect. Here I am at that wall. It's not very likely that Jesus was here, but here is a place where Jesus probably walked. This is really very exciting and interesting. We are looking at the western wall, and immediately ahead there's a structure that comes to us from about 1000 AD that blocks part of the western wall. But I want you to cast your eyes down on the road that is below. Just recently, within the last couple of years, they excavated that area. You can see a pile of rubble in the distance there, and then you can see clearly a road. That is a first century road, folks. That is a first century Roman road. That is a place that in all likelihood the apostles actually walked, that Jesus walked. When you go into Jerusalem, you see these marvelous corridors. These places did not exist in the first century. You see these marvelous arches and marvelous roads. These places did not exist in the first century. And there is a tradition now called the Via Dolorosa, which is not associated with the route that Jesus took, the Stations of the Cross. You go past the Holy Rock Cafe and up some stairs into the temple area. And now I'm going to take you to the Praetorium, because something interesting has been discovered there in the last few years that is very, very significant, and I want you to see the significance. The Praetorium is the place, it was the place in Jerusalem, not far from the temple, where Jesus was tried. And this marker identifies this as the ancient site of the Praetorium. Here we know that we're getting there. Now this has been reconstructed since its destruction, but what happened was they dug down. As I've told you before, the ancient civilizations built on top of the older ones, and so you have to go down several layers to find the first century. But underneath the site of the Praetorium, here's what they found. They found a first century Roman road. You can see it's grooved, heavily grooved. It was a well-used first century road. It's grooved because of the carts and the chariots that would have passed through this area. So this is at the site of the first century praetorium. You can almost be guaranteed that Jesus and the apostles walked on this road, these very stones. That's where they're located. And something even more significant is there. At the top of your screen, you'll see that I took a picture of the little sign that is found in this location that identifies that this is an area that they found games inscribed into the pavement. And then they say that remind us of Christ's sufferings at the hand of the soldiers. And they cite Mark 15, 16 through 20, which says, the soldiers took him away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and they called together the whole Roman cohort. They dressed him up in purple, and after twisting a crown of thorns, they put it on him. And they began to acclaim, Hail, King of the Jews! They kept beating his head with a reed and spitting on him and kneeling and bowing before him. And after they had mocked him, they took the purple robe off him and put on his own garments on him. And they led him out to crucify him. What you may never have been told is that this was called the Roman king game. It was a game that the Roman soldiers played regularly with their prisoners. You're looking at the king's game inscribed on stone in the area identified as the praetorium. It may well be that Jesus stood on this very spot as he witnessed them mocking and playing this deadly game with him. The king's game went like this. When the Roman soldiers had a prisoner that they knew was going to be executed, they began to play this game with him. They would make him a crown. They would make him king for a day. They would put a robe on him. They would feed him the best of wines and foods, and they would even let him have his way with women. He would be honored and served, and it would be a joyous party. And then they would take him out and they would crucify him. And the way they played it was by using this little game inscribed in the floor here. How exactly it operated, we don't know. But what you're looking at may be the spot where all of that happened. And John 19, verse 23 says, Then the soldiers, when they crucified Jesus, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, a part for every soldier, and also the tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece. So they said to one another, Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, to decide whose it shall be. This was to fulfill the scriptures. They divided my outer garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Therefore the soldiers did these things. You're looking at the spot where all of this likely took place. A very significant, then, archaeological discovery. And I hope that as you read these passages, that you'll be able to visualize this, maybe for the first time. Now, as I was leaving this very significant spot, and my mind is swirling in awe of what I've just seen, I saw something that I found a little humorous that I wanted to share with you as we leave the program this morning. The Praetorium was a place that you could go without restrictions. You could take pictures there. You could you were not able to touch the stones that I've just shown you for obvious reasons. But it was a free site. It's a site that you can enter without a fee. But on the way out, they had this offering box. You're looking at it right now. It's attached to a piece of that Roman road. They wanted to solicit offerings for the upkeep of what they were doing underneath there. And I found it humorous. I went over and kind of try to find the weight to this thing. I can guarantee you it's well over 300 or 400 or 500 pounds could not budget. So there's where they would take the offerings for the Praetorium. I'll come back in just a minute. Now, next week when we get back together, I'm going to continue to show you some of my slides from my recent trip to Israel. And I've received so many positive comments that I've decided to extend this for a couple of more weeks to show you a couple of very interesting sites. We're going to go to the Banos area, which is the site of Dan, the ancient city of Dan, and I'm going to walk you through the significance of that site. And if we have time, then I may even take you over to Megiddo, which is supposed to be the site for Armageddon. Hope you tune in next week. If we can help you in your Bible study, please give us a call. See you then. Bye-bye. We thank you for your interest in What Do the Scriptures Say. We hope that you will come back to scripturesay.com often for answers to your Bible questions. See you then.